So this month is Black History Month and I want to do something specifically for that, but that does take a lot of research and I haven't had a lot of time this month. I don't want to make that kind of content and just kind of like throw it together. So I'm gonna do it when I can do it properly. But speaking of research, I posted an article in June 2020 about the dangers of being Black and LGBT+, and it didn't reach enough people, which was really sad because I put a lot of time into it and it's really important stuff and stats and information that I think people should know about. And even though we know and we hear about it, I think it's just important to gain some extra knowledge about it. So for today's video, I'm going to go through the article and talk about the stats. Obviously, the article is almost 2 years old, but it's not outdated. Like, let's be real. These numbers are still going to be pretty much the same. Sadly, it's going to take years for us to change this because it's such a huge problem with deep roots in our society, and change like that doesn't come fast. I don't have all the answers for a magical systemic fix, but what I can do is to keep talking about it, and that's what I'm gonna do. We constantly hear about examples of Black LGBT+ people who get attacked or who get harassed, just in general discriminated against or treated badly in any way. So I think it's a commonly known fact that this group does face a lot of hardship, not taking away the fact that it can be hard for literally anyone to be LGBT+. I am part of the LGBT+ community, but I haven't faced a lot of difficulties. I cannot imagine what I'm about to talk about feels like because it just does not affect me, but I think if anything that really should make me talk about it even more, because my favorite Norwegian poet has a saying that goes something like, you should not put up with the injustice that doesn't affect you. And I just think that's an amazing saying, because as we've also seen from a lot of, you know, posts on social media about people not wanting to change the system that only serves them, you know, it serves them really well and it fits them perfectly and it's super comfortable for them because they don't face any discrimination. And I am literally in that group. Well, the only thing I would face discrimination about is that I'm a woman, and I mean, almost half of the people on this planet identify as women, so that doesn't really compare to, you know, people being minorities and all of that. But yeah, that's not what this video is about. That was just to acknowledge that it's of course hard for so many different people, but today we're specifically focusing on the Black community. If you're noticing that I'm kind of squinting, it's because it started snowing again and it's like really bright. While it is uplifting that the world is slowly becoming more accepting towards LGBT+ people, the Black community generally receives less acceptance than the rest. Oh, I don't know how to say this name. Claire Gisiewicz? I have no idea how to say this name, I'm so sorry. I'm gonna have to read this article name as well because it's so long. Blacks are lukewarm to gay marriage, but most say businesses must provide wedding services to gay couples. The article has stats that say that 61% of white, gay, and lesbian people face discrimination. The number for African Americans is 80%. That's literally almost all of them. That means that if you don't endure discrimination, you're lucky and one of the few. So you're unlikely to meet an African American LGBT+ person who has not endured discrimination, and that's not because of something they've done, that's simply because of who they are. Imagine facing double discrimination because on top of the racism that you probably already face because of the systemic racism in our societies, you also have to add like transphobia or homophobia on top of that. And what's also really sad about this is that the LGBT+ community in itself isn't necessarily a safe space for people. According to Stonewall, over half of the Black, Asian, and ethnic minority people face discrimination within the community itself, which, like, this should be a safe space for people. This should really be a place where everyone is accepted, but it's not. As we know, like, the LGBT+ community has huge issues with discrimination and not validating people, and it's horrible. This is not what people started Pride for. We should be united, but we're not, and it's really sad. 3 in 5 Black members of the LGBT community has faced discrimination from other people in the community. These numbers are so uncomfortably high. Over half. Over half. It's crazy. It really should not be like this. I don't understand how people can have an attitude that when you're in the same community, someone is still just not deserving of love or not deserving of acceptance. And I don't understand how you can discriminate against anyone at all, but like, you're facing the same difficulties, because I'm pretty sure most LGBT+ people have experienced some kind of difficulties in some way or some discrimination discrimination or some harassment or anything at all, wouldn't you kind of take those feelings and think that I want to protect the other people and I want to be there for them and make them feel included because other people are making them feel terrible, especially if they're facing difficulties in their ethnic community, and then you're just gonna add to their trauma and difficulties by treating them badly? Like, I don't understand. I really think that we all should just check in on ourselves and think about our attitudes and really think about how we feel about different kinds of people, because there's clearly a problem. Really think to yourself, like, do you invalidate a trans person just because they're black? If you do, like, please find a reason within you and fix that shit, because it does not justify you treating someone badly, and they have as much right to be in a community as you, and they have just as much right to feel safe as you do. I had to adjust a little bit. My leg keep falling asleep, so I tried putting a cushion under my butt. I'm not really sure how that's gonna help, but we'll see. People in the LGBT plus community are more likely to experience hate crimes than heterosexual people are, and black people are at particular risk. We constantly hear news stories and we see it on social media of black LGBT plus people being attacked or even killed. So it shouldn't be a surprise that being black and LGBT plus is dangerous. Statistics from the Human Rights Campaign show that more than one transgender person is killed every month in the US. And of course, there are dark numbers here. The number is likely higher because it's a very difficult topic to collect data on. The victims are often misgendered in media and in reports, so it's hard to identify the cases as anti-transgender crimes. Another shocking side to this is that they are often ruled as suicides, although the evidence clearly shows otherwise. The murders are often horrific, and a high percentage of the victims are people of color. Black transgender women are at the highest risk and are disproportionately represented in statistics. And it's just devastating to know that because they don't feel safe reporting the incidents, they often don't. There are so many cases of them just facing harassment and violence from law enforcement that they choose not to report the incidents. Members of the LGBT plus community have a higher chance of developing mental health issues, which could be caused by a variety of reasons, such as discrimination, homophobia, isolation, and so on. The Mental Health Foundation says that they are more likely to develop issues such as depression, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, and substance and alcohol abuse. Because such a large group of Black, Asian, and minority ethnic members of the LGBT plus community are feeling excluded and discriminated against. And this isn't made better by the fact that a lot of them cannot turn to their family for support because of things such as cultural gender expectations and prevalent homophobia. A Pew Research Center survey showed that 7 in 10 African Americans think that homosexual behavior is a sin. Of course, this is not representative of the whole group of African Americans. This is just a survey, and in different areas it's going to vary, and in different families and different cultures and all of that. So it's not to say that 7 in 10 in general overall 100% think this, but it's just to show that you could be in a place where the majority of people around you or in your community think that what you are is a sin, and feeling excluded from multiple communities that you're a part of must be extremely difficult. Black members of the LGBT plus community face a disproportionate amount of homophobic violence, abuse, and harassment. This doesn't help their risk of poor mental health, as many of them can't turn to the LGBT plus community or their ethnic community because they face discrimination from both of them. So lacking a safe place to go within their own communities, and it can also be very hard for them to find support elsewhere. I wanted to put in a little content warning right here because I'm gonna be delving a little deeper into more severe mental health issues. So if that's something that triggers you, please be aware that that's what I'm gonna be talking about next. In Stonewall's LGBT in Britain Health Report, 8% of Black, Asian, or ethnic minority LGBT plus people attempted to take their own life in 2017. 8%. We can't afford any percent at all. People are not expendable. This should be a 0. No one should be made to feel like not being here is a better option. 22% of them had experienced an eating disorder, 18% had had difficulties accessing healthcare services, and 19% had avoided treatment because of fear of discrimination. It's so important that we make healthcare more accessible to everyone, and one thing I think we can all do is is to talk in a more gender neutral way about things that were previously considered to be gendered, such as saying pregnant people instead of pregnant women, or person with a penis or person with a uterus, and all of that, instead of, you know, gendering genitalia or gendering who can carry a baby. In general, not putting gender on everything, because that's gonna help make people feel like, oh, this is a service for me, because it's not a service for women, it's a service for people with a uterus. Being made to feel like this is something that is for you, it's not for something that you don't identify with, might help someone actually seek the care that they need. Many people in that survey said that they had experienced a lack of understanding, and 19% said that they had experienced unequal treatment from healthcare staff just because they're LGBT+. A shocking 27% from this survey aren't out to anyone about their sexual orientation. How crazy is that? 27%! That's more than a fourth. That's so many people. Imagine not being able to talk to anyone. According to a Human Rights Campaign article, many Black and African American youth find it difficult to open up. Only 10% of the people surveyed would be very comfortable discussing their LGBT+ identity with a counselor. 10%. Everyone should be very comfortable talking about this. There are so many stressors that they constantly have to deal with, such as harassment and rejection from their peers, bullying and isolation, and the fear of their family rejecting them. Every time I share a stat in this video, I want to say that it's shocking because everything is shocking, but I feel like I'm overusing the word. But I don't want to take away from the impact of the word by using it too much, but literally all of this stuff is just shocking because we're talking about human beings and their everyday life and how they feel and what they have to put up with, and it's just so unfair. From this survey, 8 in 10 Black African American youth rate their average stress level to 5 or above on a 10-point scale. Imagine being that stressed all the time because of who you are, because of not just being allowed to be who you are and not feeling comfortable in your own skin, because by so many people around you, you're made to feel like you're in the wrong for being who you are. 80% of them usually feel depressed or down. 71% feel worthless or hopeless. 80% feel nervous, worried, or panicked. The numbers are taken from the Human Rights Center African American 2019 LGBTQ Youth Report, and it really shows how important it is to secure access for mental health services and health services in general for everyone. Everyone should feel safe seeking the help and the care that they need. And then let's talk about being Black and transgender, because for so many people in the LGBT+ community, it's a battle for equality and rights, but especially for transgender people, it's a fight for survival. According to a Human Rights Center article about violence against the transgender community, in 2018, there were 26 murders of transgender people or gender non-conforming people in the US. The majority of them were Black transgender women. As I said earlier, they are at the highest risk. But they're not only killed by strangers, they're also killed by their friends and partners. And only a few of them have been charged. As I said earlier, it's a difficult topic to collect data on, so it's hard to really give accurate numbers on how many people are attacked and killed every year. But regardless of that, the numbers are too high. They're way too high. 26 people that were recorded killed is 26 people too many. We can't afford to lose anyone. And imagine, I can't even imagine how alone people must feel, like being attacked by someone simply because of your gender identity and your race. I have no words for this. Black transgender people are constantly facing discrimination in many areas of life, such as education, employment, and healthcare. Because of all this discrimination, many of them turn to survival sex work to get by. This really increases their vulnerability and exposes them to more risks for violence. At least between 18 and 34% of the transgender people killed in 2015 in the US were most likely engaged in sex work at the time of their deaths. This strongly shows the heightened risk they're taking by having to turn to sex work to survive, because it's so hard for them to get into employment in other places. This really shows how much at risk they are and how being excluded often puts them in dangerous situations. Imagine how many lives we can save by creating a more inclusive society. If you're wondering what you can do in your day-to-day life to create a better place for everyone in a world where everyone can feel safe and everyone has the same opportunities, put in consistent work. Whether you're a member of the LGBT+ community or you are an ally, whenever you see transphobia or homophobia or discrimination of any sort, if it is safe for you to do so, please challenge it. With emphasis on if it is safe to do so, do not put yourself in a dangerous situation because that's only adding to the problem. But if it is safe for you to do so, please challenge if you're seeing someone being harassed, or if you're just actively seeing, you know, even if it's in a work situation or anything at all where you're seeing someone being treated differently because of their identity in some way, please speak up about it. It doesn't even have to be, you know, don't start fights with someone on the street. There could be a person of authority or someone that you can contact or someone that can step in for you, or maybe an HR rep at your workplace or anything at all. Like, try and see if there's something you can do, because you really should be using your voice. Using your voice for someone else is not virtue signaling, and you're also not a saint. Like, for a person like me who's never experienced racism, I'm not a saint for trying to help someone who is experiencing it. It's human decency. It's literally what we should do for someone. I think we all know by now that we can't just expect change to fall into our laps and for the world to just suddenly become a better place. We have to actually fight for it. We have to show governments and people in authority that we are not putting up with people being treated differently. Discrimination is so outdated. It should never have been a thing in the first place, but we're here and we have to make the best out of the situation, and the best thing we can do is to fight for people. Fight for people's right, fight for people's justice, fight for equality, and fight for people's safety. If you've sat here and you've heard the numbers that I've given you, the stats of how many people are killed, how many people are discriminated against, how many people can't even seek the healthcare that they need, this is not okay. This is people's lives, and no one should have to go through stuff like this. Everyone should get to feel safe where they are. People shouldn't have to hide who they are because of fear of discrimination. I'm gonna read a quote from Barack Obama that I finished this article with. "If we are honest with ourselves, we'll acknowledge that our own community has not always been true to Martin Luther King's vision of a beloved community. We have scorned our gay brothers and sisters instead of embracing them." That is powerful. It's so true. Things are getting better, yes, but too many people are still being killed. Too many people are living in fear and uncertainty and just unsafe being who they are. We need to step it up. We need to do better. I hope you took something away from this video, and I hope that you will do your best to stand up for what's right. Thank you so much for watching, and I shall see you next time. Keep the good vibes. Bye.